It was 1917 in Russia, and the country was rapidly falling under Bolshevik control. The Red Guards were launching coups all over the country, taking control of city after city after city. On the 5th, Tallinn fell. On the 7th, Petrograd, Minsk, Novgorod, and 2 other cities all fell to successful Bolshevik coups. On the 8th, 4 more cities became under Bolshevik control. But perhaps there was one chance of preventing the Bolsheviks from conquering Russia. After the Bolshevik Revolution in Petrograd, the Premier, Alexander Kerensky, fled the city and met up with commander of the Northern Front, General Cheremisov. Cheremisov! The Bolsheviks are taking over the country! We have to go back to Petrograd right now and occupy the city! Oh, I'm sorry. Aren't you the guy who chose not to make me Supreme Commander of the entire Russian army? Yeah, sorry, the army doesn't meddle in political affairs. Political affairs? This is a revolution! This is what the army's for! God damn it, why do I pay you? Not anymore, you former world leader. I'll help you. Really? Yeah, well, I'll go get my division together, we'll hop on a train, go straight back to Petrograd. Oh, thank God you're a lifesaver. Hopefully not to the Bolsheviks, though. So there it was. Kerensky, Krasnov, and 700 Cossacks were barreling down a train straight towards Petrograd. If they won, Vladimir Lenin would be merely a chapter in the history books. If they lost, he'd be a bookshelf. The stakes were high, but apparently, apathy among the Russian army was higher. So most of my soldiers either didn't want to fight the Bolsheviks or they were too far away to be reached. I was only able to get you 700 men. But 700? The Bolsheviks have tens of thousands of troops in the city. Yeah, well, we've lost battles, we've outnumbered the enemy several times to 1. The Bolsheviks can lose battles like that too. You're the worst motivational speaker ever. They had the train driver turn the train up at full speed. That way, when they went through the train station, the Bolsheviks couldn't stop them. On the 9th of November, they occupied the city of Gatchina. There, they asked for recruits to join them. Their only chance of winning was for troops to join them against the Bolsheviks. But all the recruits they got amounted to several officers, which contributed 2 planes to drop propaganda over Petrograd, and 1 armoured car. Not nearly enough. The exact same day that Krasnov took Gatchina, 5 more cities fell under Bolshevik control. 10th of November, Krasnov advanced on Tsarskoye Selo, a few miles away from Petrograd. His artillery fired 2 shells into the city, and that was enough to scare off the Bolshevik garrison. Marching into the city, they met the 16,000-strong Tsarskoye Selo garrison. If this garrison agreed to join them, they would have enough troops to win the war. But it was not to be. The garrison declared neutrality. It seemed that nobody wanted to join Kerensky. Krasnov may have taken over Tsarskoye Selo, but on the exact same day, Rostov and 2 other cities fell under Bolshevik control. Not only that, but the new regime was getting ready for the attack. Workers poured out of their factories to take the day off and dig trenches in the outskirts of Petrograd, setting up barbed wire. Trotsky then began filling those trenches with his Red Guards. It seemed that Kerensky and Krasnov's coup was doomed from the beginning. They had no infantry, just Cossacks who rode horses. But when all hope seemed lost, there was one last ray of hope for Kerensky. And no, I'm holding up 2 fingers. The Junkers. The Junkers were officers in training. These people wanted to launch a revolution and take back control of the city from the Bolsheviks. They broke into a garage and seized some armoured cars. They seized the central telephone exchange, taking control of all communications in the city. I don't know if Krasnov knew that there was a revolution going on in the city. Presumably they must have told him in advance, but regardless of whether or not he knew, he didn't make any move to attack Petrograd and support the uprising, which is a shame because attacking Petrograd on that day might have been his only chance of winning the battle, if there was ever any chance of winning the battle. But here's the thing, the evening before the Junker coup began, a guy was walking about with a detailed copy of the mutiny's plans on him. The Bolsheviks caught that guy, read the plans, and now knew every single move that the Junkers were going to make before they made them. And so, the telephone exchange was retaken, and then all the schools were laid siege to and occupied. The Bolsheviks taught those students exactly what it was like to go to school in America. 400 people were killed and wounded, during the storming of just one of those schools. We now move to the 12th of November, 5 days after the Bolsheviks took control of Russia. On that day, Smolensk and 2 other cities came under Bolshevik power. It was also the day that Krasnov finally decided to launch his attack on Petrograd. His 700 Cossacks assaulted the Pulkovo Heights just outside the city. His advance was slowed by a marsh that they had to cross, and significant Red Guard forces were deployed to his flanks to outflank him. And on top of that, the Tsarskoye Selo garrison of 16,000 people threatened to attack his men if they didn't cease fighting. Krasnov was forced to withdraw his forces. He ordered a retreat back to Gatchina, out of Tsarskoye Selo. The Cossacks decided to hand Kerensky over to the Bolsheviks. Kerensky was forced to disguise himself as a sailor and sneak into exile. Kerensky would spend the next couple of decades moving between France and the USA, spending a year in Australia when his second wife died. He would spend the last 25 years of his life in the USA, teaching history and giving lectures. Could you imagine being a former head of state of Russia? Spending your golden years teaching history in the USA? He would die in 1970, aged 89. Kerensky may not have won the war, but he outlived Vladimir Lenin by 46 years. Krasnov would be arrested by the Bolsheviks, but he was released. He went south and became ruler of the Don Republic. He would become a commander in the Russian Civil War. But after the White Movement was defeated, he lived in exile for the next 20 years. He would support Nazi Germany during Operation Barbarossa, in which he organised Cossacks against the Soviet Union. The communist authorities would capture him a second time. He was not fortunate enough to be released. Krasnov's army of Cossacks would lose military discipline and most of them would end up deserting. Over the next few days, Tambov, Orel, Perm, Pskov, Moscow and Baku would fall to Bolshevik coups. But despite all this success, Bolshevik victory was not guaranteed. They were still losing a war against Germany, and the Russian army was completely collapsing. Hundreds of thousands of men were deserting home in droves back to their farm just to murder their landlord. Russia was losing war to the Central Powers, and their entire armed forces was collapsing. People were rising up all over Russia to stop the Bolsheviks. During the time of the provisional government, Ukraine had declared autonomy. Now, they declared complete independence. Lenin had to make peace with Germany so he and Trotsky could focus on the civil war that everybody knew was about to start. The next video in my Russian Revolution series will be out 1 week from today.